Mr. Speaker, in relation...
Sorry, can I help the Prime Minister? You don't need to worry about the responsibility of the questions of the opposition. That's theirs. Keir Starmer, I'm asking you to leave now, because otherwise I'll name you.
The unthinkable has just happened in Westminster. What began as a routine parliamentary session spiralled into one of the most humiliating moments of Keir Starmer's leadership. Played out live in full view of the nation. The chamber was tense from the opening seconds, but no one anticipated the political ambush that was about to unfold.
Will the Prime Minister call for an urgent meeting of NATO leaders?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, she says she wants to hear about Ukraine. She's got 6 questions. She's not even asking you a second question about what we did yesterday. She's got the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, in relation...
Sorry, can I help the Prime Minister? You don't need to worry about the responsibility of the questions of the opposition. That's theirs.
Mr. Speaker, NATO is the single most important and effective military alliance the world has ever seen.
As MPs took their seats, murmurs rippled across the green benches. International tensions were already dominating headlines, military movements, foreign commitments, and growing fears of Britain being dragged deeper into global conflict. Yet something was missing. The Prime Minister had made no full statement, no explanation, no accountability. Then came the strike. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. If you care about what's really happening in British politics behind the headlines, beyond the spin, then please take just 1 second to like this video and subscribe to the Britain Daily. It's completely free and it helps us keep bringing you the hard-hitting stories that matter. Rising calmly, the opposition cut straight to the heart of the issue. The charge was devastating in its simplicity. Britain faced serious international decisions, yet the Prime Minister had failed to address Parliament directly. No briefing, no debate, no vote. For many MPs, this wasn't a procedural slip. It was a constitutional insult. The words hit hard. A fundamental lack of respect, not just to Parliament, but to the people it represents.
He is scared of us being able to ask him questions. Yes. 6 questions. Yes, he's here.
Please. I've also requested that we do need an early statement. This House should always be informed first. So I don't like the chantry. Let the questions continue.
Well, one of them asked that he is here. He's got no choice but to be here for Prime Minister's questions. That's why he's here. If he could skip this, we know he would do. But back to the matter at hand, Mr. Speaker. We all agree, all of us here agree, I think most of us here agree, that NATO is the bedrock of our security.
Gasps echoed around the chamber. Government benches shifted uneasily. The pressure was suddenly unbearable. When Keir Starmer finally rose to respond, the confidence many expected simply wasn't there. His answer was cautious, vague, and critically unsatisfying. A statement would come at the earliest opportunity, he said, but in a chamber built on scrutiny, that phrase landed like an evasion.
Mr. Speaker, NATO is the single most important and effective military alliance the world has ever seen. In the 18 months we've been in power, I've done everything within my ability to strengthen NATO. We had one of the strongest NATO meetings last year, the summit, where we had more members of NATO and more unity. When I arrived back to the House to make a statement, which of course she asked for, her position was I shouldn't have missed PMQs, I should have empty-chaired the NATO summit. That's how serious she is about NATO, Mr. Speaker.
And Parliament wasn't having it. Shouts broke out. MPs leaned forward. The tension escalated fast. Then came the moment that changed everything. A senior opposition figure stood and asked the question no one else had dared to voice out loud. If not today, then when? That single line detonated across the House. It exposed the contradiction at the centre of the Prime Minister's defence. If Parliament was meant to be informed first, why was it being sidelined? Why were MPs forced to wait while decisions of enormous consequence loomed? The Speaker intervened firmly, publicly and unmistakably. Order was demanded. But the damage was already done. For the first time, the Prime Minister was no longer in control of the room. Cameras caught it all. The hesitation, the visible frustration, the tightening expressions on government faces. The narrative was slipping away in real time. This was no longer about foreign policy. It was about authority. Was Parliament being respected or managed? Was transparency a principle or a talking point? As voices clashed and the Speaker reprimanded the chamber, one truth became unavoidable. Keir Starmer was on the defensive and everyone could see it, and this was only the beginning. By the time the session drew to a close, Westminster already knew this wasn't just another bad day at the dispatch box, it was a turning point. Within minutes, footage of the exchange flooded social media. Clips of Sir Lindsay Hoyle rebuking the Prime Minister were replayed again and again. Headlines followed fast and unforgiving. Speaker tells Starmer off. Parliament sidelined. Prime Minister loses control of the House. And the public noticed. What struck viewers most wasn't a single line or policy detail. It was the body language, the pauses, the defensiveness, the sense that the Prime Minister was reacting rather than leading. Political commentators were blunt. Former MPs described the moment as a serious miscalculation. Constitutional experts warned that bypassing Parliament on matters involving troops and international commitments risks undermining democratic norms. Even voices usually sympathetic to the government struggled to defend it. Inside Westminster, the mood turned toxic. Labour MPs privately admitted the exchange had gone badly. Some expressed anger that the government had allowed itself to be cornered so publicly. Others worried about the wider implication. If the Speaker felt compelled to intervene twice, something had already gone badly wrong behind the scenes. Opposition parties seized the moment. They framed the clash not as a procedural dispute, but as a pattern. Leaks to the press before Parliament, announcements made outside the chamber, scrutiny treated as an inconvenience rather than a duty, and that narrative stuck. For Keir Starmer, the damage wasn't immediate collapse. It was something more corrosive. Doubt. Doubt about whether he respects the House, doubt about whether he welcomes scrutiny, doubt about whether control is slipping. These moments matter in British politics, not because they change laws overnight, but because they change perception. Prime Ministers survive policy failures. What they struggle to survive is the sense that authority is eroding. The Speaker's intervention will now be cited again and again in interviews, in debates, in future confrontations. Even the Speaker had to step in. That phrase alone carries weight. Behind closed doors, Downing Street scrambled to contain the fallout. Briefings were prepared. Allies were deployed to soften the narrative. But the images had already done their work. The Prime Minister, once seen as measured and disciplined, had appeared rattled. The House, once manageable, had asserted itself forcefully, and the Speaker had drawn a line. As Parliament moved on to other business, one thing was clear. This clash will not be forgotten. It will be replayed the next time a statement is delayed, the next time MPS demand answers, the next time trust is tested. Because this wasn't just about one debate. It was about who really holds power in Britain's democracy, well, the executive or Parliament itself. And on this day, Parliament pushed back hard. If you believe accountability still matters, if you believe Parliament must never be sidelined, don't just watch. Share this moment like this video and subscribe to Britain Daily, because when democracy is tested, silence is not an option. The chamber was no longer merely restless, it was boiling. As Keir Starmer attempted to regain control, his words were swallowed by a wall of noise. MPS shouted across the benches, frustration pouring out after days of silence and evasions. The Prime Minister tried to pivot, invoking procedure, precedent and vague assurances, but every sentence only deepened the sense that something was being hidden. Then the Speaker stood. Sir Lindsay Hoyle's voice cut through the chaos like a gavel striking stone. He reminded the House of a principle older than any single leader. Parliament must be informed first, not eventually, not in due course. First, this was no minor correction, it was a public rebuke. The Speaker made it clear he had already requested an early statement. The implication was unmistakable. The Prime Minister hadn't simply delayed. He had ignored the House. The mood shifted instantly. What had begun as a heated exchange transformed into something far more dangerous, a legitimacy crisis. MPS weren't just questioning policy anymore. They were questioning respect, accountability and leadership. Opposition figures pressed harder. Why limit scrutiny to a short Prime Minister's question slot? Why avoid a full statement when British troops, alliances and international commitments were involved? The accusation hung heavy in the air. The Prime Minister didn't want questions because he didn't want answers. Starmer bristled. He pushed back, accusing critics of grandstanding, of shouting him down, of manufacturing outrage. But the defence rang hollow. Cameras caught the hesitation, the clipped responses, the visible irritation. This wasn't strength. It was strain. As the exchange spiralled, another interruption came, sharp, unmistakable and devastating. The Speaker stepped in again, this time directly shielding the opposition's right to question the government. You do not need to worry about the responsibility of the opposition's questions. The message was clear. The Prime Minister does not control scrutiny. Parliament does. That single intervention landed harder than any shouted insult. It stripped away authority. In one sentence, around the chamber, MPS nodded. Some smirked. Others sat in stunned silence. Starmer tried to reset. He shifted to familiar ground. NATO, alliances, global security, safe territory, rehearsed lines, talking points polished by advisors. But it was too late. No one was listening anymore. The issue was no longer Ukraine or deployments or diplomacy. It was trust. Why should the House believe assurances when information had been withheld? Why should the public believe transparency when Parliament itself felt sidelined? As the noise subsided, an uncomfortable truth settled over Westminster. The Prime Minister had lost the room, not through one mistake, but through hesitation, delay, and a refusal to confront Parliament head-on. By the time the session staggered forward, the damage was already done. Clips were spreading online, commentators were sharpening their analysis, and inside the chamber, MPS knew they had just witnessed something rare. A Prime Minister openly challenged and publicly corrected by the Speaker, and still the fallout was only beginning.